Hi everybody. This is a continuation of the discussion that we had last week on chapter 1 that pretty much deals with the question of who are we as consumers. So we had a set of 4 readings and they're all, I would say, they all fall under the overarching question of how are we as consumers shaped by the way advertisement and marketing and consumption in general work. So as you remember, last week we were talking about differences between, or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about differences between capitalism and consumerism. We looked at language in advertisement. We also talked about consumption of food and consumption of toys as 2 specific cases. Um, this week, or the past week, we focused more on the vehicles of consumerism. And here we looked at specifically at chain stores, at brand names, and applications that are not only used to reach the potential consumers, but also redefine our notions of, for example, of intimacy. So let's look at these 4 readings. And I have to say that um, having read your summaries, I think that you pretty much covered everything that I wanted you to cover in those readings. But just to be sure, I'm going to go over them one more time. So your first reading covered the topic of chain stores, and this was an essay that rebuked claims that chain stores and restaurants somehow affect the local color and destroy the regional character of American towns and cities. And Paustrel makes a she makes a sort of opposite claim that it is really the terrain and weather and local culture that define those chain stores in particular ways. So even though you may have them in different parts of the country, they all have their own peculiarities depending on the area where they are. And in some ways, they do both. They enhance um, the local atmosphere, but at the same time provide consumers with the comfort of being able to easily reach the commodities that they are looking for. I know that some of you had a little bit of an ambivalent opinion about this idea, and you correctly pointed out that you know no matter how much we like what those chain stores can offer us, they still put the local businesses out of business very often, and it's always an issue of employment, because even if they do employ people, these are often jobs that are not very desirable in terms of career and long-term employment. The second article that you looked at was sort of a general overview of the history of advertising in America and how it kind of evolved, and how certain themes or certain practices became more and more popular. Um, Bill Bryson, he argues that some of the companies, and these are my own words, he doesn't really use that phrase, but achieved the impossible. And by that, he means the kind of unity between the name brand like Tabasco or Kleenex or Coke or Thermos that are basically indistinguishable in the public mind from the product itself. And so we might think about it as the highest achievement of marketing and advertisement, because our identities become tied to a specific brand in ways that are almost impossible to separate. So we use soda and we think Coca-Cola, and especially if it's something that we like to drink, we like to drink soda. That connection between Coke and what we are drinking, that is part of our habits and our just daily pleasures and needs. It becomes very, very tight. The next article that we covered was Snaps to Riches: The Rise of Snapchat Celebrities, and this article is a little bit outdated in the sense that those apps they become popular and then they kind of fade away. But the general idea is, first of all, how applications like that work and why popular brands want to use them as a marketing tool, and they also generate a number of questions. So for instance, if you use the application like that, like Snapchat, how aware are you of the broader context in which companies are paying for advertising, um, and make deals with power users to promote their products? Also, if does this kind of knowledge affect how you understand your own photo messaging habits and how they might be potentially used to advertise? And finally, we have an article about public display of transaction. It's in some ways it's similar to the previous article. They both talk about um, the sort of the online consumerism, the part of our identities that are very much tied to what's happening in the virtual reality. And here it's an interesting essay because to me, and I'm pointing it out here at the very bottom of the slide, is that it's the question of financial exhibitionism, which Attic kind of claims that this is the result of using applications like that, is not maybe as much, it's not as important as just the idea how we redefine intimacy and privacy. And I think that's just a much more interesting and important point, that through revealing um, certain elements of our lives, sometimes not even being aware how much we do that and how much people can read into those narratives, that we redefine the idea of what is intimate and what is private. So what what I want to what I want you to take out of these readings, apart from those very specific points that those articles make, is just again uh, a number of ideas that help us understand better of how we are shaped by consumer culture, and what are kind of spheres or elements that put together just really affect our lives and who we are to a very high extent. Because if you think about our the way we eat, the way we the things that we consume, the way the language that advertisement uses in order to make us buy things, how our needs become redefined through that consumption, how brand names are trying to reach us, and how the tools that we use and understand to be quite, in many ways, quite neutral and not related to advertisement, can nevertheless be used as vehicles of consumerism. So I'm gonna leave you with these ideas to think a little bit more about. And we will, this week in your discussion, you're shifting to another set of issues. So I will be talking to you about it quite soon, and giving you another kind of bunch of ideas to think about and a little bit broader context quite soon. So that's all for now. Thank you.